To start, this is admittedly part nostalgia. I don't go out of my way to relive this, but I am fond of the memories I look at. What I'm referring to is getting lost in a game. Not just to get lost in the act of being immersed, but literally getting lost. Like everyone's first experience in Dark Souls when you don't know where to go. Going through Firelink and looking for which direction only to stumble upon the skeletons. And you learn the hard way which way not to go. Or going a bit too far and not paying attention when exploring in Minecraft and losing track of how to get back. It's harder to do that now given that maps, flight, extended render distance, and all kinds of stuff has been added. But back in the day, it was just whether you could find your lit torch or not. Now practically every game has a mini-map or compass built into the UI, and it's practically impossible to get lost.
What is that?
Sure, Elden Ring doesn't technically have a mini-map, but whenever you're not in combat, you can open up your map at any time, and you're never lost. I've only felt lost once the entire game, and that was because I needed an item to get to a certain spot, not because the terrain ever made me think. I am not saying that maps or mini-maps in general are in any way a bad thing in itself. Metal Gear is a stealth series that enemy and area awareness is critical. Keeping track of where enemies are and where all of your lines of sight are is crucial, and the gameplay reflects that. So it is perfectly natural to have it in the game. And it's not just useful or convenient to have, but absolutely necessary when it starts getting more complicated. And Warframe, on the opposite end of the spectrum of gameplay, uses the map to find the enemies you can execute them as quickly as possible and get as big of numbers as possible. There are some stealth aspects to it, but really we just use it to goof off or navigate areas as quickly as possible, like for Ayatan sculptures. These aren't the only ones to have it, but they're the most notable, exceptional ones. I want to be clear and get my bias out of the way first. I don't like open world games. I don't think they're bad, but I personally don't like them. I think we're overrun with them. Even Souls-like games or Halo have gotten open world games. That's why Elden Ring is my second least favorite game in the Souls series. I'm not even going to name the worst one. Some games still capture the feeling of discovery, and that comes from being lost. Voices of the Void perfectly encapsulates what I'm talking about. Yes, it has a compass, but you set the direction, and if you screw up, that's your own fault. Primarily through the game, you rely on landmarks or methods that it gives you to track down where you're supposed to go.
Remember the last time you used a public restroom?
All of the Backrooms games vary in quality, but there's one thing they all share. You guessed it, you get lost. Animopolis and Pools also do this, but Backrooms is the most memorable. Just getting lost in the repeating halls and winding corridors gives you this feeling of isolation, only relieved by discovering something new. Mine, and most everyone else's, first experience to getting lost, Minecraft. We all remember getting humbled by our first exploration and having to hide in a dirt hut because it got too dark. Back before you could reliably use coordinates or get a map or fly, I remember going out to explore and going too far and never finding my old base. So then I built a second base, and that's where I played most of it, and then came back months later when exploring, found my old base, and it still had all the same stuff in it, like a time capsule before I got there. You just can't get lost anymore. Horses, maps, elytra. You just can't get lost. It's not as though being lost in itself is this amazing experience, but it's something that you have to have. Kind of like when I was going on my road trip across the country. There was a section in Colorado that the highway was blocked off due to high winds. They were blocking off every road going eastwards, even the ones that weren't the highway. I had to find a way to get around through the back roads, going around closed off road. It definitely wasn't fun at the time, but that was an experience I needed to have to learn you can overcome. I feel like to an extent gaming has been neutered, where you just can't have that good old-fashioned struggle. Dark Souls lets you get lost. Hell, it relied on it. One of the best reveals in the game was only possible if you get lost. After beating the bell gargoyles going down the lift, you return to Firelink, demonstrating the interconnected worlds of Dark Souls. I only got into Dark Souls a year or two ago, and this was through the help of my friend. I had to walk through a bunch of it because it made me get lost, and looking back on it now, I feel like that's just proof that games have been too easy. Seeing how people got through the Crystal Caves and through Blight Town and learning from what they went through, what people before you went through, really puts into perspective how different games were back then. The Souls-like genre is a perfect example of this, not just to the topic of getting lost, but having to overcome challenges. A lot of people said that Souls 1, Souls 2, Souls 3, Demon Souls have saved their lives, like they got through their depression with it. People need a challenge to overcome. Humans don't benefit from easy. I mean, sure, you can get creative, build an enormous home, and sure, that is beneficial. But there's a certain benefit to overcoming a great challenge, beating a huge boss or something.
The demon was destroyed, hell yeah.
I know this video has been super lectury, but it is important to say that there's no wrong or right way to play a game unless you're making somebody else's experience worse. It's heavily steeped in nostalgia. That nostalgia is there for a reason. Here in 30 years, we'll all look back on what we have played that came out today that we are glad we played. Like Warframe is one of the newer games, came out in 2015, and I've got a lot of fond memories of learning different tactics, getting different numbers, different stats. I don't think anything practically affected my life today, but who knows, maybe in 30 years I'll see it differently. The moral of the story is get lost and stay safe.